Chapter 1. The Dangerous Encounter. Gregor Winsley had long since learned that the galaxy was not a place for the faint of heart. He had been to worlds where the air was thick with tension, planets that seemed to pulse with hostility, and even in his few years as a soldier in the galactic core, he had seen horrors that would make most men crumble. But none of those experiences prepared him for this. None had truly taught him what it was like to face an adversary so alien that every instinct in his body screamed for him to turn and run, but his feet, driven by a singular purpose, kept moving forward. Zolaria, once a thriving hub of trade and culture, was now little more than a graveyard for the forgotten. Its twin suns beat down on the empty desert, casting long shadows across the twisted remains of what had once been a bustling metropolis. Tall spires of crystalline buildings jutted from the sand like the bones of a long-dead creature, their once glowing surfaces now dulled by the passage of millennia. The air was dry, the kind of heat that sears the skin and parches the throat with every breath. But even in the face of all this, there was a sense of grandeur to the ruin, a haunting beauty that spoke of a civilization far beyond humanity's reckoning. Gregor's mission had started with the simplest of instructions: locate the artifact of the Kentry, an ancient alien race whose technology was said to be unmatched in the galaxy. The artifact, a device rumored to bend time itself, had been lost for centuries, its exact location a mystery. But after weeks of deciphering cryptic transmissions, Gregor had come to Zolaria, following the faint trail of clues left by explorers who had vanished in the desert, never to be heard from again. His boots, worn from the long journey, crunched against the sandy expanse, the sound strangely muted in the vast, silent landscape. He could feel the weight of the environment pressing in on him, a constant reminder that he was alone in the midst of an ancient world where nothing was certain. Every step felt heavier than the last, as though the sands themselves were reluctant to let him pass. The radio in his ear crackled intermittently with static, the only connection he had to the outside world. There was no one else for miles. No backup, no reinforcements, just him. As he moved deeper into the desert ruins, the air began to change. It became heavier, almost oppressive. The temperature soared, and his skin felt the burn of the suns overhead, but beneath the heat, there was something else. An electric charge in the air, the feeling of being watched. And then, in the distance, he saw it. At first, it was nothing more than a silhouette against the pale orange horizon, but as Gregor squinted, his breath caught in his throat. A figure, standing tall and proud amidst the desolation, a presence that seemed to command the very air around her. She was a woman, or at least she resembled one, but there was something profoundly alien about her. Her skin was a deep violet, her body draped in dark, flowing robes that billowed around her like smoke in the desert wind. Her hair, black as midnight, cascaded down her back in waves, a sharp contrast to the sun-bleached landscape. But it was her eyes that caught him most, a piercing amber glow that burned through the distance, locking onto him with a gaze so intense it felt as though she could see straight into his soul. Gregor paused, instinctively reaching for the blaster at his side, though he knew it would do little good against whatever power this woman possessed. There was no doubt in his mind that she was no ordinary being. Her presence was like a storm, an overwhelming force that sent a chill up his spine. He had come to find the Kentry artifact, but now it seemed that he had found something far more dangerous. The woman stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful, yet each step seemed to make the ground beneath her feet tremble. She was coming closer, and with each passing moment, the tension between them grew thicker, more palpable. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy, as if the very fabric of reality was being bent by her presence. "You'll die in seconds, human," she hissed, her voice cold, almost mechanical in its precision. It was not a warning, it was a certainty. Her words hung in the air like a threat, the promise of pain and death laced into every syllable. For a moment, Gregor stood frozen, his instincts screaming at him to turn and run, to flee this place before whatever force this woman represented could reach him. But then, something inside him snapped. A surge of defiance coursed through his veins. He had faced death before on the battlefield, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, and he had never backed down. This woman, this alien being, might be powerful, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. Without a second thought, Gregor did the one thing that would undoubtedly seal his fate. He took off his jacket and stepped forward. The action was simple, almost reckless, but in that moment, it was the only thing he could do. The desert heat pressed against his skin, but his mind was clear. He was no longer afraid. He had come to Zolaria with a mission, and no alien creature, no matter how powerful, was going to stop him from seeing it through. The woman's eyes flickered with surprise, though her expression remained stoic. She had expected fear, hesitation, a plea for mercy. Instead, she saw a human who was undeterred, who was willing to face whatever death she could bring without flinching. She tilted her head slightly, studying him as if he were some curious specimen to be analyzed. Gregor's heart pounded in his chest, but his resolve remained unshaken. He didn't know what she was capable of. He didn't even know if she was capable of death, but he did know one thing. He was not going to back down. Not now. Not ever. Your kind has always been so predictable, she mused, her voice still carrying that chilling detachment. But your courage, while admirable, will not save you. No human has ever walked away from me. Gregor's hand tightened around the handle of his blaster, but he didn't draw it. He didn't need to. Not yet. He knew there was more at play here than just brute force. This woman, this alien, was part of something much bigger, something that transcended physical combat. He had to think differently. He had to find a way to outsmart her, to use her arrogance against her. But before he could make a move, the woman stepped forward again, this time closing the gap between them with unnatural speed. She was upon him in an instant, her body language suggesting that she could end his life with a single movement. But she didn't. Instead, she stood mere inches away, her eyes blazing with fury. "You are a fool," she hissed, and for the first time, there was a trace of emotion in her voice, anger, perhaps, or frustration. "You think you can challenge me? You think you can survive in my world?" Gregor met her gaze, unwavering. "I'm not here to challenge you," he said quietly. "I'm here to complete my mission. And if that means I have to die to do it, then so be it." The woman's expression shifted, ever so slightly. A flicker of something, perhaps curiosity, or maybe even respect, passed through her eyes. For the first time, she seemed to regard him not as an enemy to be eliminated, but as something more, something worthy of attention. "I don't know why you've come here," she said slowly, her voice taking on a different tone now, one that carried the weight of something ancient, something beyond understanding. "But know this, you will never leave Zolaria. Not alive, not unscathed." With those final words, she stepped back, and for a brief moment, Gregor thought she might strike. Instead, she turned away, her body vanishing into the shadows of the ruined city. The air felt lighter, though the danger was far from over. He had made his first move, and now, the game had truly begun. Gregor stood there, in the silence of the ruined city, his body still tense and alert, but his mind racing. The woman, or whatever she was, had stepped away from him without striking, but that didn't mean she had been deterred. Her words hung in the air, pregnant with threat. Her warning was clear: he wouldn't survive. And yet, something about the way she had spoken it, almost as if she were testing him, had stirred something deep within him. He had made a choice by not fleeing, by not letting fear rule him. The world was full of deadly creatures and impossible odds. But if he had learned anything in his years of service, it was that fear was a far greater enemy than anything else. He couldn't let it control him now. With a deep breath, he slowly turned and began walking toward the ruins, his hand hovering near the blaster but never drawing it. His eyes scanned the desolate streets, every building a reminder of the long-gone civilization. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. He could feel her presence, her eyes still upon him, though she had vanished into the city's maze of shattered structures. He didn't know if she was waiting to strike or if she had just decided to leave him to the elements, but he didn't plan on sitting around to find out. He had a job to do. A few meters ahead, he noticed a large, half-collapsed structure with strange alien symbols etched into the stone. It could be what he had been searching for, an entrance to the Kalantry's lost vault. His heart quickened. He wasn't far now. But as he approached the ruins, a strange energy pulsed through the air, like an electric current that made the hairs on his neck stand up. It was unmistakable. The artifact was near. He was close. But so was she. Chapter 2. The Hidden Truth. Gregor found himself standing at the threshold of what appeared to be an ancient gateway. The entrance was flanked by two massive, intricately carved pillars, worn down by time, but still radiating an otherworldly energy. The symbols on the pillars glowed faintly, as if they had been waiting for someone to arrive. Gregor reached out a hand and, despite the unsettling feeling that tugged at him, touched the cool surface of the stone. The moment his fingers brushed against it, the ground beneath him trembled, and the gateway's symbols flared brightly. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through his bones. It was as though the entire structure had come to life in response to his touch. His pulse quickened. The artifact. It had to be close. But before he could take another step, a voice echoed through the ruins, cold and cutting. "You think you're the first to seek the artifact?" It was her, the alien woman. Her voice sounded distant, but there was no mistaking the venom behind her words. Gregor spun around to see her standing at the far end of the narrow alleyway, her eyes still burning with that same intense amber glow. She had reappeared, and this time, there was no mistaking her intentions. Her presence was not just that of an observer. It was that of someone who had claimed this place as her own. "You do not understand what you are dealing with," she continued, her voice now tinged with a quiet anger. "The Kalantry's power is not to be wielded by the likes of you. You are a fool if you think you can control it." Gregor clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He had heard enough of her threats. "I'm not here to control anything," he said evenly. "I'm here to find the artifact and finish my mission. Nothing more, nothing less." The woman's expression shifted slightly, though it was difficult to read her intentions. Was she amused? Or perhaps intrigued? Whatever it was, it only deepened the mystery of who or what she truly was. "You think you're the first human to come to Zolaria?" she asked, taking a step forward. "You think your race has the power to claim what the Kalantry left behind? Do you even know what you're about to unleash?" Gregor stood firm, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I don't need to understand everything. I just need to finish my mission." For a moment, silence reigned between them. The wind stirred the sand around them, and the ruins seemed to hold their breath. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, she advanced toward him, her steps quick and purposeful. Gregor's instincts screamed at him to draw his weapon, to prepare for the inevitable confrontation, but he hesitated. There was something in her eyes now, something that hinted at a deeper knowledge, something he didn't fully comprehend. "You think you can walk away from this?" she hissed, her words laced with a quiet fury. "You will never leave Zolaria? You're already too deep into the Kalantry's web." Her hands crackled with energy, the air around her pulsing with an invisible force. Gregor could feel the tension in the air, the oppressive weight of her power. She was not just a threat, she was an obstacle that had been placed in his path, and if he wasn't careful, she could end him in the blink of an eye. But Gregor didn't back down. He stepped forward, meeting her intensity with the same unyielding determination. "You're right about one thing," he said, his voice steady. "I'm already too deep to turn back. But I'm not here to be intimidated. I'm here to finish what I started." The woman paused, her fiery gaze fixed on him. For a moment, there was no movement, no sound, only the weight of their shared confrontation hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. Then, without warning, she lunged. The air seemed to crackle with the tension between them as the alien woman advanced. Gregor's instincts screamed at him to move, to fight back, but his mind remained calm. He had been in situations like this before, outnumbered, outmatched, and in danger of losing everything, but he always kept his cool. That was the only way to survive in a galaxy as unforgiving as this one. Her lunge was swift, but Gregor's reflexes were sharper. He dodged to the side, just barely avoiding the shockwave of energy that surged from her hands. The force was like a punch to the gut, and Gregor could feel the heat of it pass by him, singeing the fabric of his jacket. Before he could regain his footing, she was already upon him again. With a single, fluid motion, she grabbed him by the arm, her grip like iron, and slammed him against the stone of the ruined building. Gregor's breath was knocked from his chest as his back hit the cold, jagged rock, but he didn't panic. Instead, he shoved his knee into her side, using the leverage to break free from her hold. She hissed in pain but didn't retreat, her expression more predatory now, her amber eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. "You are persistent," she said, a hint of respect lacing her voice, though her words were still laced with venom. "I will give you that. But your persistence will not save you. Gregor stumbled back a few steps, his mind racing. He had to think quickly. He could feel the artifact's power pulsing through the ruins, growing stronger with every moment. She wasn't just guarding the artifact, she was the artifact's protector, its keeper. It was her role to prevent anyone from uncovering the Kentry's secrets. But Gregor wasn't here to take control of their power. He was here to find a way to stop the impending war between the Galactic Council and the alien forces. He wiped the blood from his lip, glaring at her. "You're not the only one with a stake in this, you know," he said, his voice steady but tinged with the weight of his mission. "I'm not here to claim power. I'm here to stop it from falling into the wrong hands. The galaxy doesn't need another weapon of mass destruction." Her eyes narrowed, the intensity in her gaze sharpening. She stepped back, her stance shifting. "You think you can stop what is already in motion? The Kentry were the architects of the universe's end, human. And you think you, with your tiny mind and primitive weaponry, can undo their design?" Gregor didn't flinch. "I don't care about your design. I care about saving lives. That's why I'm here." For a long moment, the two of them stood locked in an unspoken standoff, the silence stretching between them like a razor-sharp thread. The wind howled through the broken buildings around them, but in that instant, it felt as though the entire world had frozen. Then, as if seeing something in him that she hadn't noticed before, the woman's expression softened, ever so slightly. "You are a fool," she said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. "But you have courage. I will give you that." Her eyes flickered to the entrance of the ancient vault, then back to Gregor. "Go. Take what you came for. But know this. You will never leave this place unscathed. You will be changed. Whether you survive or not is another matter." Without another word, she turned and vanished into the shadows of the city, leaving Gregor standing there, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't understand what had just happened, why she had let him go, why she had backed down, but he knew one thing for sure. The real challenge was only beginning. He wasn't just after an artifact anymore. He was up against a power that could change the very fabric of reality itself. And now, with the protector gone, it was time to see what lay hidden beneath the surface. Chapter 3. Into the heart of the vault. The entrance to the Kentry vault stood before him like an ancient, silent sentinel. Its doors, though damaged by time, were still magnificent, carved with intricate patterns of alien script and symbols that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. It was a marvel of technology, one that made Gregor's heart race with anticipation. He could almost feel the hum of the artifact's power just beyond the doors, a force so palpable it seemed to reach out to him. But he knew better than to rush in blindly. The woman, whatever she was, had given him a warning. And even though he didn't fully understand her cryptic words, he couldn't afford to ignore the danger that lurked within the vault. The Kentry were not a people to be trifled with. They had created a weapon so powerful that it had caused the galaxy to shudder, and now, after centuries of hiding, it was waiting for someone to find it. Gregor stepped forward, placing a hand against the smooth surface of the door. As soon as he made contact, the symbols etched into the stone began to glow with a soft, ethereal light. The ground beneath him trembled slightly, as though the vault was awakening from a long slumber. The hum of the artifact grew louder, filling the air with an almost hypnotic resonance. He took a deep breath and stepped through the threshold. The moment he entered, he was struck by the sheer size of the chamber. It was massive, larger than anything he had imagined, and inside, the walls were lined with more alien symbols, their meanings beyond his understanding. But what truly captured his attention was the center of the room. A pedestal, floating in midair, bathed in an unnatural light. On it rested the artifact. It was a sphere, pulsing with energy, its surface shifting in a way that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Every time Gregor's eyes tried to focus on it, the sphere seemed to change shape, becoming a different object, an alien construct too advanced for him to comprehend. He could feel the energy radiating from it, and it was both intoxicating and terrifying. He reached out slowly, every muscle in his body tense as he approached the pedestal. The closer he got, the more the air around him seemed to thrum with power. The sphere wasn't just an artifact. It was alive, its power surging with an almost sentient intelligence. It was as though it were waiting for him, calling to him. But just as his hand was about to make contact with the sphere, the ground beneath him shuddered violently. The lights in the room flickered, and a voice one that sent a chill down his spine echoed through the chamber. You cannot control what you do not understand, human. Gregor spun around, his eyes wide, his heart pounding in his chest. The woman, her figure standing in the doorway, was back. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever before, and in her hand, she held a weapon of unknown origin, its blade shimmering with dark energy. You should have listened, she said, her voice low and menacing. Now, you have awoken something that cannot be stopped. Gregor's hand tightened around his blaster. He had no choice now. The artifact was within his reach, but so was the woman, and she was prepared to destroy him to protect it. The final confrontation had begun. The tension in the vault became suffocating. The woman, her glowing amber eyes fixed on him with predatory intensity, stood like a dark sentinel at the entrance, blocking his only escape. Gregor's mind raced as he glanced between the artifact and her. The power of the Kentry had been waiting for centuries, and it was his duty to make sure it didn't fall into the wrong hands. But her presence here, her warning, suggested that there was more at stake than just the artifact. You're making a mistake, Gregor said, trying to steady his breath, his voice calm but filled with a quiet urgency. I'm not here to take it. I'm here to stop what it can do. You've been protecting it all these years, but it's already too late. You can't hide it forever. She tilted her head slightly, the eerie glow of her eyes flickering as though pondering his words. Then, without warning, she lunged forward, her movement swift and fluid. Gregor barely had time to react before she was on him, her hand shooting out to grab his throat with an iron grip. You are so naive, human, she spat. You think you can stop what the Kentry started? You are nothing but a blip in the grand scheme of things. Her grip tightened, cutting off his breath. The artifact is not a weapon, it is the key to the galaxy's true destiny. Gregor's vision blurred as her fingers tightened around his neck, but his hand instinctively moved to his blaster, gripping it tightly. The woman's face was inches from his, her voice cold and dangerous. I told you you cannot control what you do not understand. But Gregor didn't back down. With a burst of energy, he pushed up with his legs, forcing her to release her grip just enough for him to draw his weapon. He fired, the shot piercing the air with a sharp crack. The energy bolt hit her in the side, but instead of falling back, she absorbed the blast, her body glowing as though the shot had simply been absorbed by her alien form. She stepped back, her face dark with rage. You are a fool. If you want to die, then you will have your wish. The ground trembled again, and the chamber seemed to come alive with an unnatural hum. The artifact, the sphere at the center of the vault, flared with a brilliant light, and the entire room seemed to distort, as though time and space were bending around it. Gregor realized in that moment that the artifact wasn't just a relic, it was a conduit of unimaginable power. No, Gregor shouted, his voice hoarse. This is what I came for. I'm taking it, whether you like it or not. With a final surge of strength, he lunged at the pedestal, his fingers grazing the surface of the artifact. The moment his hand made contact, the world seemed to explode around him. A wave of energy erupted from the sphere, surging through his body like a tidal wave of pure power. He gasped as the energy coursed through him, burning every nerve, reshaping his very essence. For a moment, it felt as though his mind was being torn apart, his consciousness breaking free of his body. The woman shrieked in horror as the energy filled the vault, flooding the room with light. No, you do not understand, she screamed, but it was too late. The artifact's power had taken hold, and there was no turning back. Suddenly, everything went still. Gregor stood, his heart pounding in his chest, but the pain was gone. The hum of the artifact had faded, and the vault had returned to its eerie quiet. He looked down at his hands, no longer the same human hands. The power of the Kentry artifact had transformed him, his body now resonating with an energy that was not his own. He turned toward the woman, who had fallen to her knees, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. She was no longer the powerful, menacing force he had once feared. She was now weak, her body drained by the very power she had sought to protect. Gregor stepped forward, his gaze fixed on her as she trembled before him. You were wrong, he said softly. I didn't need to control it. I just needed to release it. Her voice was a whisper, barely audible. You are the one who will change everything. Gregor didn't respond. Instead, he turned to the artifact, the energy within it still thrumming in the air. He had come here to stop the weapon, but now, he realized, it was no longer a weapon. It was a tool that could either save or destroy the galaxy. He took one last look at the fallen woman, the once immense protector, now nothing more than a shadow of her former self. Her words echoed in his mind, but he had made his decision. The power of the Kentry would no longer belong to any one individual. It would belong to the galaxy, and he would be the one to decide how it would be used. Chapter 4. The End of One Era, the Beginning of Another. Gregor stood alone in the heart of the Kentry vault, his mind racing. He had released the artifact's power, its energy had flowed through him, and now, it was in his control. He could feel it, coursing through every fiber of his being. The Kentry had designed it to change the course of history, and now, Gregor was the one who held that power. He knew he could use it to destroy, to conquer. But that was never his mission. He had come to this forsaken planet to prevent the galaxy from falling into chaos, to stop the powers that would exploit the artifact's strength for their own gain. And now, standing on the precipice of a new era, he realized the weight of his responsibility. The woman, the protector of the artifact, had been wrong. The Kentry had believed that no one, not even a human, could control their power. But they had underestimated humanity. Gregor wasn't like the others. He wasn't driven by greed or ambition. He was driven by the need to protect, to preserve the balance in the galaxy. As he stood there, the woman's final words lingered in his mind. "You are the one who will change everything." He stepped toward the pedestal, the artifact now dormant in his hands. But as he touched it again, he knew that it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The galaxy would not be the same after today. And as the new protector of the Kentry's power, Gregor Winsley was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The era of the Kentry was over. But the era of humanity was just beginning.